Alright guys, so today we are going to have a conversation once again about the next generation consoles, specifically with the PlayStation 5, and what inspired me to want to talk about this specific topic is I've seen a lot of people over the past 5 months on my channel express how excited they are for the PlayStation 5, how they're going to be there day one, and the reasoning for that is simple. It's because of the games that they are hoping to be there at launch, and the games that they know they're going to get throughout the life cycle of the PlayStation 5. And as somebody who's been experiencing some of these games myself on the PlayStation 4 more recently, I can't help but feel the same way. I think we're all very eager to hear and learn more about Sony's plans. And right now, things are very quiet. And I have a feeling, as unfortunate as this may sound to some people, that things might remain quiet when it comes to PlayStation and Sony for a little while. I say this because we know that 2020 is going to be the big year for them, especially with the PlayStation 5. That doesn't mean I don't think we're going to get anything for the remainder of this year. I think there will be some significant things that Sony will do and will talk about, but to what degree, I don't really know. But focusing in on the idea of PlayStation 5 launch titles, the launch exclusives, and even more so focusing on which game are they going to have that's going to be that big game, as they call it, the game that moves units, the console seller. Which game is it going to be? There's a lot of speculation that can be done here. I have one game in particular in my mind that I think will be there day one that is going to be that big console seller. I think it's going to be the game that competes with Microsoft's Project Scarlet and the launch of Halo Infinite. We know that that's exactly when Microsoft plans to launch the next Halo, and regardless of what you think about Halo, there's a lot of, at least it seems to me, there's a lot of hype surrounding Infinite because there's a lot of promise there, and especially knowing it's going to launch alongside Microsoft's next-gen console, it really doesn't get any big than Halo for Microsoft, although I would argue that people want to see new things. Halo still does hold some weight, it seems, so there's no denying that I think Sony would do well to continue to view that as a potential threat. There's a lot of people who think that Project Scarlet won't really stand a chance, and it's hard to say. We're still in the early days of this stuff, but all I will say is that if Microsoft is planning to have their biggest franchise, that being Halo, the next mainline entry, which they're clearly putting a lot of money and time into, especially with the development of a new engine with a Halo Infinite, Sony would do well to make sure that they have something just as big, if not maybe even bigger, ready. Now, a lot of people would say, well, does it get any bigger than a game like The Last of Us 2? And I would say probably not, if I'm being honest. I think The Last of Us 2 is going to end the PS4's life cycle in possibly the biggest way imaginable. And I'm sure that they will bring it over to the PS5 with some kind of major update, some kind of major visual upgrade, and that alone I think would get a lot of people excited. But I know you guys are probably wondering, what's this game, MBG? You said that there's one game that you think is going to be there for sure day one that's going to be that big console seller, and I want to tell you what it is. But before doing that, I have to also say that another important thing we do need to keep in mind when having this conversation is we still do not know Sony's plans when it comes to how they want to treat the launch PS5 titles, whether or not they want them to be true console PS5 exclusives, or if they're also going to release on the PlayStation 4. We can really only speculate, once again, based off of what Sony has said, and frankly, it seems to me that there's a good chance, a very good chance, that these games that are going to be there at the launch of the PlayStation 5 or within the launch window as well are also going to release on PS4, because Sony has went on record saying that they want a pretty seamless transition, and they're going to continue to support the PS4 for about 3 years. At least that's their plan, about 3 years after the launch of the PlayStation 5. Something else that kind of feeds into this notion is the fact that we know the PlayStation 5 is going to be a pretty powerful console and a pretty feature-rich console, and it seems like, realistically speaking, it's not going to be sold for anything less than $500. And with that in mind, we have to realize that not everyone is going to want to upgrade day one, and because of that, the PS4 could end up still playing a very vital role for Sony for the foreseeable future, even after the launch of the PlayStation 5. But at the same time, I could be completely wrong about that. Maybe Sony is still trying to figure it out themselves. I think their competition with Xbox has made it pretty clear that most of the games, or at the very least we know Halo Infinite, will also be an Xbox One launch title as well, or it will launch on the Xbox One day and date, I should say. So it's hard to say which direction Sony wants to end up going in. I feel like if they really want to push PlayStation 5 units hard, they're going to do what they've, I believe, traditionally done, if I'm not mistaken, and end up releasing their launch exclusives as true console, next-gen console exclusives. It's hard to say. But getting into that big game, the big game that Sony's going to have, there's one game that keeps popping into my mind, and maybe it's just because I finished playing it recently, but I think it's going to be Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, I could be wrong on this, but I feel as though that is the game that Sony is going to want to basically combat what Microsoft is going to offer with Halo Infinite. I just don't see Sony being complacent enough to look at what Microsoft's getting ready to do. Regardless of what we think, we have to acknowledge that Microsoft does have big plans for Project Scarlet. Whether or not we think that those plans are going to work out, we can all just have our opinions. But what they're doing is pretty significant between Project Scarlet and Halo Infinite, and I think it would be very smart of Sony to not get complacent and to make sure that they're going to have that big title that will pretty much potentially steal the spotlight off of Halo Infinite. And I feel like if there's any title other than The Last of Us 2 that has the potential to do that, is a next generation announcement. The announcement of Horizon Zero Dawn 2 for the PlayStation 5. I think that would just kind of blow people away. Another reason I feel like it's Horizon Zero Dawn is because if there's any game that we've gotten more recently that I think would be considered like a masterpiece, or has gotten just a lot of praise and a lot of people have huge expectations for the sequel, I think it would be Horizon Zero Dawn. It came out, I believe, early 2017, so you have to imagine that not too long after it released, seeing the reception it got, seeing how well it sold, you have to imagine that Sony allowed Guerrilla Games to immediately start work on a sequel. We also know that there's a sequel in development. It hasn't necessarily been officially confirmed, at least I don't think it has, but we've heard like voice actors come out here and say that they're working on it and it's going to blow our minds. We've heard Sony's commitment to wanting to create even bigger and better AAA games and supporting their successful franchises. So when you think about all this, to me it just makes sense that we're going to see Horizon Zero Dawn 2 as the big launch title for the PS5. Now, do I think that there's a chance it might not be? Yeah, of course. I'm just predicting here. I could be completely wrong, and I fully understand that. In fact, I kind of expect to be wrong, if I'm being honest. But if it's not Horizon Zero Dawn 2, what else could it be? Well, we know there's going to be some other titles we can expect as well. One title that I believe, honestly, is a given is going to be Gran Turismo 7. It's going to be interesting because I think we're going to see Gran Turismo 7 and Forza Motorsport go head-to-head, which will be very interesting. Both heavy hitters there for sure. So I think that one's going to be there. Maybe if it's not the launch of the PlayStation 5, I think it will certainly be there within the first couple of months of the PS5's life. Another game that could potentially, I think, surprise people and be bigger than we expect is this rumored Demon's Souls remaster that we've been hearing about. I don't know why Sony hasn't said anything about it yet, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's not Demon's Souls, but everything is pointing to it being a remake by Blue Point Games of Demon's Souls, which I think a lot of people would be really excited for. And I have this feeling that it's going to end up being a PS5 launch title, or it's going to release within the first year of the PS5's life. And I think that would be pretty big, if I'm being honest, because we know how successful Bloodborne was on the PS4. We know how successful the Dark Souls games are, and a lot of people are aware at this point, that Demon Souls is where it all started, but it was a PS3 game that kind of went under the radar. And so the one thing I can speak to that is Bluepoint Games did say, when talking about the title that they're currently working on, the remake that they're currently working on, is how it is a complete remake from the ground up. So if it ends up being Demon Souls, it's going to be just a complete, updated modern day version of Demon Souls. And some people may not like that, but I have a feeling most people would like that. If it's not that, though, I honestly am not sure what else it could be. I'm sure you guys can let me know in the comments what you think Bluepoint Games is working on, what their remake is, and if it's going to end up being a PS5 launch title, which game you think would have the biggest impact. But I think there could be some others as well. Some people are thinking that God of War 5 is going to be a launch title. I wouldn't anticipate that. We have to realize that we are pretty much just a little over a year out from God of War 4, God of War 2018. So I think it's going to be a while, frankly, and we have to be realistic with this conversation. We're not going to see Insomniac's game. We're certainly not going to see anything from Sony Bend. There's a chance maybe we could see something from Guerrilla Games and their second team. That's another thing that I think some people have been speculating about, is if we don't get Horizon Zero Dawn 2, because maybe they want to take more time to work on it. They want that to be a game that they release maybe later in the PlayStation 5's life cycle to move more units at a more important time. We know that Guerrilla Games does have a second team, and they are currently working on something, and a lot of people believe it is a new Killzone game. And we know that Sony launched Killzone Shadowfall with the PS4, so maybe they want to kind of repeat that and have another Killzone at the launch of the PS5. I think a lot of people would be excited for that. I know I would be. But my money, frankly, is on Horizon Zero Dawn 2 being that big AAA game that's going to go head-to-head, toe-to-toe with Halo Infinite. And frankly, if I'm being honest, I think Horizon Zero Dawn will win that battle, honestly, in terms of excitement and hype. Nothing against Halo, but Halo is somewhat of an older franchise, and I think a lot of people consider it somewhat tired. I know that there's people who were once hardcore Halo fans that feel like they just kind of have fallen off. But I do also acknowledge that there is hype for Halo Infinite. I'm not saying there isn't, but I just don't think it could frankly match the hype of the announcement of Horizon Zero Dawn 2 being a PS5 exclusive. And if Sony really wanted to take it to the next level, they could end up making Horizon Zero Dawn 2 a PS5 true exclusive, which would, in my opinion, sell PlayStation 5s like crazy. I think the PlayStation 5 is going to sell well regardless, but I have this feeling if Sony really wants to go in aggressive on pushing units at the launch, they will have at least one or two games that are PS5 only titles. But at this point, only time will tell. I know that this isn't any type of factual information, but I love making these videos where we can speculate, we can go based off of the information we have and try to predict what will happen. It just makes for some fun conversation, especially during these down times when there's just honestly not a lot going on. So we're going to have to wait to see if things pick up, but that does it for the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm sure you're already way ahead of me on that one. Which game do you think is going to be there at launch and be that big launch title for the PS5, the big must-have title that's going to go up against Microsoft and Halo Infinite? I will be very interested to see what you guys have to say. Be sure to leave the video a like if you did enjoy it. It really helps. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.